Hello and welcome. I will be doing a bit of Tiny Leaders Deck Tag. For this tournament, by the way, if you're wondering, yes, I was in the last official Tiny Leaders Reborn tournament. I just didn't record anything about it because I lost terribly. but today I will be talking about my Grist Tiny Leaders Reborn deck, one of my first Tiny Leaders Reborn deck lists, and as you can see, it has changed a lot over how much I've played it. So it's got a heavy black manoline, 48% green, 61% black. We have average opening hand with 2.43 cards. We have a focus on 1 and 3 drops with a little dip in 2 drops. But that's because mainly this deck is a control deck, which I've heard a lot of people say that control isn't that good in Tiny. I would like to disagree. I just think there isn't enough control archetypes being used in Tiny, and that is why I'm bringing in Golgari Control, featuring Grist as the commander. What makes Grist so great is that you don't have to send her to the command zone at all. If you have cards like Unearth or Reanimate, you can easily bring her back, because she is a creature in the graveyard. Also, similarly, you can see lots of graveyard recursion cards in here, like Life from the Loam and Constant Miss. Yes, there is a bit of Turbo Fog in here. Overall, Grist's main abilities focus around Insect Tribal and sacrificing, and as well as the size of your graveyard. So this isn't a creature-heavy deck, but there's as many insects that could fit in. As much as I'd like to make an Insect Tribal deck, tribal decks tend to be on the weaker side in Tiny Leaders. So, for our mana dork, we got Birds of Paradise. We got Brain Maggot for hand attack. Devouring Swarm for late game finisher with all the tokens Grist makes. Eternal Witness for recursion. Hornet Nest for more tokens and slows down red aggro. Masked Vandal for artifact and enchantment removal, also an insect due to the changing type. Mortician Beetle for the amount of tokens you're going to be sacrificing. Old Rutstein for just filling your graveyard. Old Stick Fingers for a big body if you got a lot of creatures in there. Realm Walker because it allows you to play cards off the top of your library, which can be pretty good with Grist if you want to look at the top of your library and see if you'll get like another ping off of Grist's ability, because it will trigger again after it was an insect milled. And some finishers for control is Scoot Swarm and Scoot Mop. Sorceries is pretty standard stuff. You got Inquisition of Kozilek, Life of the Loam, Profane Command, Reanimate, not as common as Unearth, Thoughtseize, not as much played as Inquisition, but since it's much more control leaning, it's going to have a lot more hand attack. Toxic Deluge for creature decks. Abrupt Decay, very good Golgari removal in this format. Constant Miss for fog. Dark Ritual for mana. Deadly Dispute for sacrificing. Fatal Push because you're going to be losing a lot of stuff, so it'll pretty much always be 1 mana destroy a creature. Grave Purge to be able to put all your creatures from the graveyard on top of your library in any order. This goes well with Grist. It's instant speed. It draws you a card. It's not that good, but if you have a lot of like insects in your graveyard and you have this card, you get a lot of tokens out of nowhere. Grizzly Salvage to help you search through your deck. Noxious Revival for graveyard recursion. Luxior Giada's Gift, just for, to reanimate Grist, because I think it's funny. Phyrexian Altar, get some mana off all those tokens you make. Shadow Spear, counter Saint of Gate. Oh my god. Geist of Saint Traft. I cannot speak today. And also, it's pretty good with getting life back, trampling, getting through damage. Haunted Crossroads, similar reason to why Grave Purge is in here. Just a little bit of Grist synergy. Also, So just so you know, Haunted Crossroads and Grave Purge will both get you back Grist, which is relevant also. Journey to Eternity, it's an Ixalan, like, enchantment transforms to a land. This one, when an enchanted creature dies, returns to the battlefield under your control, and it transforms to this land right here, Atzal, Cave of Eternity, which is also relevant because it can get back Grist as well. Bayou, Boseiju, Castle Lockman, all these lands. Is there any Takanuma gets back Grist as well. Urborg, mana fixing. Yavimaya, mana fixing. Urza Saga is in here because it just gets these artifacts quicker if you need it. It also gets back some hate pieces in the sideboard, I think. Yeah, Hex Parasite. And that's about it from the sideboard. There used to be Swarm Yard in here to be funny, but I leaned away from Insect Tribal so I could actually win in the tournament if I wanted to. And in the sideboard, we have Back to Nature, just in case there's a huge enchantment deck I battle. Collective Brutality, Standard Tiny Staple. You can be able to like attack your opponent's hand for instant sorcery cards, creature removal, and sort of a drain effect. Also, you can also just discard your hand to get all three. Well, not technically discard your hand, but discard 2 extra cards. Then we have Collector Oof for artifact decks. Gaia's Blessing for against mill decks. Golgari Charm, just in case like there's a lot of board wipes that we're going up against, or like we need to destroy more enchantments, regeneration, or like we need board wipes ourselves, because this is a token board wipe, basically kills all 1/1s. This is pretty decent. Hex Parasite gets rid of counters if we have like an opponent who uses a bunch of +1/+1 counters, a bunch of planeswalkers. We can very much easily use Hex Parasite to remove loyalty counters. Not poison counters because it's target permanent, but like any permanent that has a counter, as it says, just counters. It doesn't matter if it's like charge counters from an Aether Vial. +1/+1. Flying counters, death touch counters. This takes down Ozolith. This takes down Planeswalker. It's also an insect, which is a relevant type. Call Harpooner takes down flyers. Pernicious Steed, great board wipe card. Pretty silly, not good enough for main board because it requires a bunch of mana. Scavenging Ooze to hate on our opponent's graveyards, and Xantid Swarm against other control decks who have counters, so we can attack with this and then play our things in the second main phase. And yeah, that's just Grist Control, and I'm so happy to have this up for the Tiny Leaders Tournament, which is closing this Sunday, which is the date 9/25/2022, and I will be competing. If y'all see me there, I will love to see you all. Oh, I forgot about this card, Volrath Stronghold, same reason as Haunted Crossroad and Grave Purge. Just brings creatures back, especially Grist, which is important because you don't like Grist going in the command zone, paying all that extra commander tax. You can just cheat her out of the graveyard because she's in the creature in the graveyard. That's why she is kind of busted in this kind of deck archetype, because Planeswalker creature as well, that gets up Tarmogoyf, that gets up Stick Fingers. I would consider Tarmogoyf maybe, but I really wanted more of an insect theme. But yeah, that was Grist, the Hunger Tide Decktech. I hope you all liked it, and I will be probably recording more videos to talk about in the tournament. And if you're wondering about my voice, yes, I am quite sick, and that's why I sound kind of groggy. Oh,